there, my name is Kay Byfield, and this is your ArtSpeaks Studio moment from ArtSpeaks Studio in Dallas, Texas, where we teach art classes, mostly in watercolor. It's hard to believe that it's already 2022. After all the turbulence of the last few years, we are all hopeful that this will begin a period of peace and love. And that was the theme of my holiday card this year. For some time, I've been experimenting with a new approach to my paintings. And when the pandemic began, I had more time to paint, and so I began this experimentation very consciously. And my holiday card this year reflects my wishes for the coming year, but also is one of my earliest examples of my new painting approach. The static nature of most two-dimensional artworks has always bothered me. In order to create an image on paper, which is absolutely still, we tend to capture things in an instant in time. And there is no possibility of motion. I've always admired artists who tried to convey motion and indicate that everything is transient, particularly the futurists and the cubists and some other artists that have played with those kinds of things. I never wanted to paint like those artists particularly, but I did admire what they were trying to do, and I also would like to find a way to indicate that something happened before this and things will continue to happen after this. I also like to think about how context and point of view dictate the way a subject is interpreted. For instance, I think about the Pulitzer Prize-winning photo by Alan Diaz of the seizure of Elian Gonzalez from his cousins who wanted custody of him. 6-year-old Elian had survived an attempt with his mother to emigrate by small boat from Cuba in 1999. His mother and most of the other emigres drowned, and his cousins in Florida took him in, but his father in Cuba wanted him back. The cousins refused to return him even though international law required it. The family staged this photo with Diaz, a freelance photographer. From other positions, and not particularly the other photograph I've seen here, but from other points of view, it's clear that the gun was never pointed at the child or his cousin who were inside a closet. But the photo makes it look as though the child were in danger from the SWAT team. The point of view matters. And we always have access to several points of view. We have two eyes, and those eyes see things from a different perspective. And we most notice this when we have double vision. I've always kind of enjoyed that sensation, perhaps when I've had a few drinks. When I decided to change my painting approach and attempt to give the sense that everything in the world is transient and things are always changing and moving, I didn't quite know how I would accomplish that. I experimented a lot. I had a lot of failures, but I was at peace with the idea that I would make mistakes, that I wouldn't have instant success, and that the failures are just part of the process. I was okay with throwing away a lot of paper. So the only thing that I was looking for was a sense that I was getting there. But in the meantime, I had a lot of muddy colors, I had a lot of boring shapes, and things were not working in most of the paintings that I created as I tried to develop a process for how to do this. Inevitably, the work involves a lot of repetition, there's transparency, and there's a lot of overlapping shapes. I finally am getting to the place where I'm starting to see some progress. This is one of the first paintings I did using this approach that I thought was reasonably successful. My process was to start the painting with a subject that interests me, like a photograph of a group of children singing. Then I took copies of the photo and overlapped them, scaled and distorted them to come up with new shapes and break up the image to make it less predictable. My goal is to simulate the idea that the subject is constantly moving. Even inanimate objects move. The atoms are in motion and the earth is continually rotating. In this case, the children are all singing together, so there is movement. This painting started with a photograph of a child on a merry-go-round. And so the carousel is going around and around, the horse is going up and down, the child is moving, and so it seemed like a good subject for this approach. I followed the same processes in the other painting with layered versions of the reference photograph. I really enjoyed the shapes that the horses and the child provided. I also enjoy the fact that because I am deviating from replicating a scene in nature, it gives me license to invent shapes and arbitrarily choose colors. I love the freedom, and I think this direction has promise. In my experience, it always takes perseverance and intention to change your painting style and go beyond it. We are all born with a certain personality and temperament and ways that we have adapted over time. But if you want to add to your repertoire, go beyond it to do something new and unique, you have to make a conscious effort to do that. Most of the painters I really admire clearly did that as they did their paintings. And I'm hoping that what I'm doing now will lead to some really interesting work down the road. Until our next ArtSpeaks studio moment, happy painting.